So let's just talk about advantages and disadvantages. The calculations, what I'm expecting you to understand, and then some of this qualitative stuff as well. So advantage, activity-based costing is more accurate, generally, more effective for cost control. It might really help us see if our products are profitable or not, better for product and production and pricing decisions. Other uses, we can use it to, really it's a method of allocation. So anytime we're making an estimate for selling and administrative costs, SG&A, and determining profitability of market segments, activity-based costing is going to be our best method. And the best ones I've seen have used statistical regression models to determine like the line of best fit and really build a good indicator of what is driving the cost of the business. Disadvantages, this is pretty expensive to implement and maintain because businesses change. You need to determine, you need to have all of that information, like how many direct labor hours, how many machine hours, how many square feet. Someone needs to be managing all of this. So it's actually an expensive process to maintain, and only beneficial really on scale. And it's still uncertain unless we're really have a skilled team making sure that it statistically makes sense, then it may not be beneficial because it could still be inaccurate. And ultimately, it's not acceptable under GAAP. So we're still going to have to report using a plant-wide method for generally accepted accounting principles for financial reporting purposes. So we'll be keeping two sets of books for our internal reporting and our financial reporting. And then 4 types of activities that drive costs. We have our unit level, our batch level, our product level, and our facility level. These are just ideas. Just know the different levels. Memorize this. It's just helpful for you to bucket off what could be driving these overhead costs. So at the unit level, we could have for each product. So it might be providing electricity to power machinery. It may be the water needed for a steaming plant, but it's at the unit level for performing each unit performed on each product unit. So each unit of production needs something specifically. The batch level is performed for groups. So if we're producing a batch of cookie dough or a batch of cans, we're allocating based on the batch product level. So unit level, I'd see more like if we're building cars, like for each unit, maybe we're building that one specific car or something larger, and it'd be easier to track. Batch level, I normally think like baked goods, or I think maybe like a batch of books, like, oh, we're going to print 100,000 of that bestseller book. That's a batch of books. While unit level is more specific. The product level can be performed on the entire product line. They're not affected by the number of batches. So let's like think of a publishing company. So a unit level for books, what could be a unit level activity that's performed on each book? So they're giving an idea of power. Maybe we can track the exact amount of power directly attributable to the printing press, right? That would be a unit level activity we could track if I had a monitor on it to track the expense for it. Or maybe the repairs and setup costs related to that. That could be a unit level. For each book, we know how, each time we set up that activity, how much it costs to make that one book or to set up that cost. Batch level, then setting up that line of books for book A. We are printing 100,000. That's 100,000 batch. Product level would be for all books, right? So that machine is running all the books all day long. That might be, instead of a setup cost like in the unit level, this might be a product level of how much does it cost to keep those books on that machine. So product level activities are performed on each product line. So that entire product line. So it might include multiple batches. So a batch includes multiple units, and a product includes multiple batches. And then facility level is performed to sustain the facility. So we're thinking like the electricity cost for the entire facility, the supervisor cost to make sure the facility is staying in order. And then here's some examples of each activity and the drivers, right? And these are just different ways to think of activities. Activities, we have like assembling components, setup costs, cutting parts, printing checks, machine hours, direct labor, and number of checks would drive these. Batch level is calibrating the machines, receiving shipments, sampling product quality, recycling hazardous waste. And you can see that activity drivers clearly match the examples of the activity. So calibrating machines, number of batches, we might measure it by. Receiving shipments might be the number of orders. Hazardous waste recycled, tons recycled. Product level might be the designing, like the engineering designing, the organizational production, the controlling of the inventory. And then you can see the activity drivers related. And the facility level might be cleaning the workplace, providing electricity, greenhouse gas emission. So just realize that we could have activities at each of these levels and track them potentially at each of these levels as well. And then, like someone mentioned earlier, that we might have manufacturer defects that we have to track as well. And cost of quality report, that's what it's called, to track the quality of our ingredients and what it's actually costing us for our losses. So we'll track that on the back side. So we'll run through our normal process, and at the end we'll say, well, we had this much wasted good because of products that didn't meet customer expectations or failed products. I think this is pretty intuitive. But right, if we have everyone's received a shipment of something and then it sucks, right? And what's the cost of that? Well, if we have poor quality, then our customers might be unhappy with the defective product, might not come back to us. There's costs with return shipment. We might have to refund them, and the internal failure might cause issues before it's even delivered. So having bad quality messes up from a cost perspective. Like, it loses us money to have bad quality. But it costs money to have good quality because we need someone checking the stuff before it's sent out. We need to train our employees. We need people to appraise activities, which include inspections and specification requirements. And so there's costs on both ends. And so normally companies find a balance, right, of good quality materials. You can't have a good checked 100 times before it's sent out. You might have a sampling of goods checked to make sure it's okay. So you need a balance to make sure you can still provide a cheap, affordable good that is of decent quality. Lean operations. These are just some more terminology. Lean operations just referring to this just-in-time. So when you think just-in-time manufacturing, you can think of lean operations as well. And the idea is to reduce costs, not store a lot of inventory, and then as products are ordered, you ship them out as quickly as possible and at high quality as possible. So the idea, like I think I mentioned this last class, was you could have a processing plant operating 24/7, making like the Ford Model T. You can have a bunch of black cars. It's making as many black cars for the same model as possible. But nowadays people want custom cars. And in order to get those custom cars at high quality, you do a batch process and change up that same manufacturing plant to make those batch of cars that the customers want as close to the ordering cycle as possible, rather than holding on to a huge amount of inventory that might never be sold. That's the idea of lean accounting and lean operations, is to eliminate the waste, don't have a bunch of inventory, use alternative procedures, and simplify the product costing method. So there's lean operations, lean accounting. The lean accounting is the same as, if we found activity-based costing and the overhead rate were pretty close, just use the overhead rate. Like, let's just use the quickest method possible that's going to get us the best answer we can. So I just always be aware there's that cost benefit of quality versus like if I was to tell you, hey, I'll clean your house and I'll get it 90% clean. Like, the windows might still be dirty, but I'll get it 90% clean and I'll do it for $100. Or I can get it 100% clean your windows, dust all the corners, clean the fans, clean under the carpet, but it's going to cost you $1,000. You might tell me, you know what, just do the $100 job. I can do the rest myself. Same here. It's like, get most of the way there. Do a good enough job where people will be happy, but don't waste. Once there's a cost benefit phase out, make sure we don't waste a bunch of time and money doing things that aren't really needed. And then here's just some examples. I think this is useful to learn. Just try to get an understanding of it. But on your quizzes, you might be tested on what is a good example of a unit level activity for a sports arena or a hotel or online education. What's the facility level? Just make sure that you can kind of match those things. Should be it shouldn't be too bad, right? Like hotel, a facility level, the electricity for the hotel, cleaning the hotel, maintaining the pools, and it'll always be multiple choice, right? But unit level, well, our guest is our customer, so checking in the guests. That's something that happens at the unit level. Service level, scheduling the personnel. Batch level might be doing lunches, like when a bunch of people come in. The idea here is that you can do ABC for service providers too, right? Don't just think this is related to products, but being able to determine the cost of your service is just as important, because services are products. So if I'm thinking of accounting, if I have to prepare a tax return, I might be me filling out the tax return might be the unit level, but I also, the batch level might be having a team doing the research, and then a facility level, like my electricity for my office, right? So we can do activity-based costing for services as well. And then the reason we do this, again, circle it all back, is just customer profitability. We want to make sure that we're assessing the profitability of our customers, to make sure that we're able to price competitively. Like if let's say I'm doing an accounting service and I'm charging $200 an hour, and I find out my costs are only $20 an hour using activity-based costing. And I find out all my other competitors are charging $200 an hour as well. A competitive advantage for me could be to lower my rate, because I know I can afford it. But on the flip side of that, a competitive advantage is also having this information and knowing, hey, maybe everyone's operating at a loss. Or if I do my activity-based costing and figure out, well, it actually costs me $200 to do a tax return, it might make more sense for me to charge $300 so I make a profit, even if I get less customers. And so there's this way to do these cost benefit analyses to determine, hey, do I want to add more, sell more books? Do I want to sell more, get more customers? And can I afford to do it and take a hit on my margin, take less profit? Or should I take less customers and offer a more premium service? So this customer profitability analysis is really helpful, and we can only really do it based off this activity-based costing methodology. And so it encourages management to consider all resources consumed to serve a customer, so we can determine the actual cost of the good, so we can figure out our profit margin. And then it helps us determine, like we talked about the go-karts, should we sell a custom go-kart or should we sell a standard go-kart? I can't tell you how many times, and I'll tell this to all college students, that like one of the most profitable businesses in the world is tutoring. I know when I was in college, I was an accounting tutor, and some people paid me, when I started, it was $30 an hour. And by the time I graduated, I was getting paid $60 to $100 an hour to be an accounting tutor for the CPA exam. And there's no cost associated with it. But so many people would come up and say, why don't you start an accounting firm? Why didn't you start, since you have your accounting degree, or why don't you get an office, or why don't you sell these products, or why don't you come with me and do this startup and make technology? And I'd say, well, how much, at the end of the day, how much are you making an hour? Because I'm making $100 an hour. And my costs are nothing. I don't have an office. I just meet people at a coffee shop. And most people couldn't compete with that. $100 an hour, that's over $200,000 a year. And the reason they couldn't compete is because my profitability was so high, because I had no fixed costs. I had no overhead other than driving. And so knowing your cost side of things and having an advantage from a cost perspective is just as important as having an advantage from a profit perspective, from a revenue perspective. So being a college student, never hesitate to look at, being potential business majors and entrepreneurs, never hesitate to look at opportunities that are low cost, but can offer you a high margin. So just some realistic examples here. That's the end of chapter 4. And so I'm going to stop recording here and allow for some questions.